Drew, that I normally do this with, he can't make it this evening. So you lumbered with me, which could be a good thing, could be a bad thing, I don't know. So it's a new listening experience for the people that listen to Design Truth. I suppose it might be a bit like when Robbie went solo or something, I don't know. So it could be it could be a good thing, it could be horrendous. But I suppose the first thing to say is thanks for coming on to join us. I know we all caught up, was it last week, or just to kind of test to see if everything was working fine. And to those that will be watching this on YouTube, whatever, they'll see that there are 3 people in the same room. So it's a very new dynamic for us to contend with, and I'm sure we'll survive over the next hour or so. But what I would say is thanks for actually listening to the podcast as well. So as I said to you jokingly the other day, I've definitely spoken to some people and they've said that they listened to it, and then I've actually probed them a bit about what episodes have you actually listened to, and then they kind of come unstuck. But you guys kind of managed to survive that kind of probing, so thank you for that as well. I always think it's the best places to start with just a brief introduction. So there's 3 of you, so I'll let you go one at a time, but maybe Mark, it might be best to start with you and introduce yourself and the Imagination Factory, and maybe just about life before the Imagination Factory as well, so people can get a bit more of an understanding of life pre and post kind of the Imagination Factory.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Mark Hester, co-founder of the Imagination Factory and technology director. So prior to being here, I worked at PDD in West London, and in fact that's where I know all these guys from, and quite a few of the other people at the Imagination Factory. It was a good place for getting a good foundation in design, product design, and industrial design and engineering, and great place to meet fantastic people and to sort of make lasting friendships, really. So having my background was, I did a degree in industrial design at Brunel University, and absolutely loved the physical side of design, so the model making, the prototype engineering, that sort of thing. And having done that for quite a while at BDD, I then moved a bit further upstream and started getting a bit more involved in the design process again. I was trained in human-centered design at a place called the Luma Institute. And then after sort of 15 years there, I had the opportunity to set up the Imagination Factory with my colleague Julian and some other people. And it's gone on from there, really. So I've sort of dotted around from different things, from training in industrial design, realizing my drawing wasn't so good, so stuck to the making things, and then moving a bit more into the sort of more strategic design and human-centered design, and that kind of thing.
So, nice. Well, it's got you this far, so
yeah.
And Tris, what about you?
Yeah, I'm Tristan Keach, and I'm creative director at Imagination Factory. I joined just over a year ago, but as Mark said, we've known each other from PDD. I started off wanting to be a car designer, and so I studied automotive design at Coventry University, and very rapidly thought, I'm not really that into cars. Everyone else was absolutely nuts about them. There was a lot of talk of petrol and engine sizes and different brands and heritage and all that kind of stuff, and it didn't seem to be a lot about design. As I understood it, it seemed to be a lot of talking about cars. Anyway, it got a bit tedious, so I did an exchange in Germany, and that was where I discovered it was a bit more like the way they teach industrial design over there is a bit more like the Bauhaus model, which is like what foundation courses are based on, and it was absolutely fantastic. Anyway, that really you did lots of different modules, interiors and jewelry and furniture, and as well as cars. So it gave you a really nice sort of mixed bag of influences to sort of inform your practice. So when I came back, I was determined to be a product or industrial designer. And my first job, after a little stint in working in Paris freelancing, I came back to London and landed a job and ended up joining the Conran Empire. Wow. So Terence Conran's Conran and Partners, which was formed. So he had lots of inquiries about, for industrial design projects, and he didn't have the team to sort of to furnish, to sort those kind of projects out. So our team we brought in, and we had like a 10-year real blast, amazing kind of time, incredible projects, traveled to Japan and China and the States and all over Europe. Fantastic award-winning bits of design. So I stayed there for a long time because it was so amazing. And what was really good was that it was a bit like being on a foundation course or being in Germany. It was I was surrounded by architects, interior designers, graphic designers, and people that talked about brand. And I learned a hell of a lot about how you kind of about design and lifestyle experiences, really, and how everything has to be consequential. And a great example of that is a restaurant. You design everything. Common restaurants used to exist in the day, but the architects would design everything from the building down to the matchboxes and even the menus and everything in between. So but after a while I thought there's this thing called design thinking and human-centered design, and I thought I need to kind of explore this because it's all very well having a sort of designer's view of the world. So that's what I was invited to join PDD. That's where I met Mark and the guys, and that led on to things, and eventually I ended up joining the Imagination Factory.
And here you are. Is it good to be in front of the whiteboard again?
Back to the whiteboard.
Yeah, good stuff. And Tim, you're our first engineer. So
I'm a token engineer on the
yeah.
as it were.
Yeah,
So
hopefully you won't get lynched in the comments.
No. Well, let's see. So I studied mechanical engineering down in Bath, and before I went to university, I did an art foundation. So it's interesting just to hear Chris's background. So there was some expectation that I should be going off to design college and so forth, but I chose to be a bit more geeky, do lots of maths and physics and stuff. So first job was an engineering job. I then worked for Avon Technical Products, designing some gas masks. Then joined Mark at PDD, so I was there for about 3 years. From there, I then did some medical work contracting. Worked from Herman Miller, which is then sort of all the sustainability background, which is really useful. Then moved to Dyson, so I was with Dyson for 8 years, mostly in floor care and a couple of years in solid state batteries. And then unfortunately sort of redundancies came around about 6 months ago, as they have done for a lot of people. But fortunately for me, it was just a time when Mark and Julian were just looking for somebody to head up their engineering a little bit more. So
fortunately for us as well.
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, I was looking earlier, and Mark can speak Brazilian Portuguese. I'm presuming Tris might be half decent at German or French. So
yeah, pretty good at French. My wife's French, so I have no excuse.
Tim, just English or just native tongue?
Not only on a good day, though.
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, I tried to do a little bit of prep for people that come on, and it sounded like the Imagination Factory started in the same place where most companies start, and that was in a pub in Richmond. Is that right?
That's absolutely correct. Yeah. So 2010, there was a group of us in the pub. I remember it really well actually, because it must have been around the time that YouTube clip of the guy with his dog that chases the deer, and he shouts Fenton, and we were in this pub in Richmond, and there was a beautiful old style painting of deer from Richmond Park, and someone had put a post-it note on it with this guy shouting Fenton. But the point of the story is not that; it's that we were just doing what you do, having. Before COVID, it was actually, you go to the pub and it was like a normal thing. So after a while, it got a bit boring. It's hard to imagine that now. But someone had brought a newspaper along and noticed that UK Sport had put an advert in for what they called garage innovators. And they were looking for people who could come up with new ideas for helping Team GB in the run-up to the London 2012 Olympics. So, while we'd done talking politics and putting the world to rights and whatever else you do. So we just started having some ideas and, scribbled them down on the back of the beer mats, put them into the competition, and we're really quite surprised when we won. It was just a bit of fun, but we won that competition. But unfortunately, it turned out that the idea that we put in ended up being in conflict with one of the sponsors of UK Sport.
Right.
So we weren't allowed to do that project, but instead they gave us another one. They asked us to work on an active harness for a Paralympic table tennis player, which was really, really interesting. But what they also hadn't told us was that we needed a limited company in order to receive the award money and do the project. And we would, this was something we were just doing evenings and weekends.
Yeah. So are you at PDD at the time? Or?
So yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So this was not anything in conflict with our day jobs, and it was really just a bit of fun. But as a result, we thought, oh, we haven't got one of those. How do we do that? So we came up with the name literally overnight, Imagination Factory, and I think Julian did the logo, probably in Word, and we registered the company at Company's House and got on and did this little project. And then it just sat there, really. It was there, and it was doing nothing. And then Julian had moved on from PDD after a while. So sort of 4 years later, he'd moved on, gone somewhere else, and then was made redundant. And so we all said, look, why don't you just take this company forward? Why not have a go rather than looking for another job somewhere? And I said to him, if you get it up and running, I'll join you. And he did. He just managed to get some work in, and yeah, the rest is history, really.
Yeah, good stuff. And when we caught up last week, one of the big things for you guys was this thing called Factory Friday, where we was talking about it, and Tim, you kind of nudged Mark under the table and said, can we talk about Factory Friday? So I guess maybe from all working at an agency like PDD, you maybe have taken some of the good bits that from there, and maybe some of the bits you didn't quite like, and are now working perhaps in a different way. And Factory Friday is one of the things that, it sounds great, but have you got some examples of some of the things that have come out of that, and what that involves? And is that something that when you was at PDD, you'd have loved to have done things like that, but maybe that just wasn't the thing at the time? And I don't know if you could go into a bit more depth about Factory Friday, because it sounds good. So
yeah, I can fill you in on that a bit, and then I'll hand over. But so it's taken different forms really throughout the sort of the last 6-7 years. But the concept was designers can't help themselves. We do our day job, but we don't switch creativity off. And it's one of the most annoying things I would imagine for people who are not designers, is that designers and engineers might look at something and say, oh, that could be so much better, or I wouldn't do it like that. Or, yeah. And I think really that, the right response to that is, well, go on then, do better. And the reality is, when you're working in a consultancy style company, you do all the work that comes to you from clients, and that's right, that has to come first. But there's always more areas to explore, and in a team where there's so much creativity and so much knowledge and experience, expertise, and you just see stuff, you get inspired by things. You see a documentary on Netflix, and it inspires something in you. It's very rare that a client project will come along that will perfectly match those things. So when we set up the Imagination Factory, we just wanted there to be an outlet, because otherwise you do end up doing those things in the evenings, at the weekends, and you never give them enough time, and they never go anywhere. So it gets a bit frustrating. So we wanted to make sure that was built into the DNA of the company, really, that it wouldn't always take the same shape, but we would always try and find a way to allow the team to have an outlet for their creativity. And it's not about sanding your surfboard, it's about actually finding ideas and things that you're interested in or curious about, and then seeing, well, how could this be of greater benefit to the entire team? And so what that really boils down to is trying to see whether any of the ideas that we have internally could spin out into a new company, or could become a technology that we license, or might just become something interesting that we put out into the world and inspires other people. It can take a lot of forms. So through the years, we've done different things. We took the approach of the Google 20% idea at one point when we were smaller and had fewer projects on. We could afford for everyone to spend every Friday doing our own stuff, hence Factory Fridays. That's kind of had to adjust with the times, and so we do that more on a monthly basis now. But the other reason that it's changed is because we received some grant funding through Innovate UK for a couple of different projects that weren't the challenge. The problem came from various government departments, whether it was the Border Force or Department for International Development or the railways. They would put a challenge out, but the response to that challenge was our own ideas. You know, it was our own creativity that responded to that challenge. And as a result, the way that Innovate UK works is that they give you some grant funding, and then you keep the ownership of the intellectual property that you develop during that project. So that's had a couple of great outcomes. The most significant of which is that we span out a new business last year called Plasma Track, and that came from the funding we received to develop technology to clean the leaves off the line. You know, this great problem that we have in the UK and other parts of the world. So as a result of that, we found that we were actually spending a lot of even our sort of normal working week was actually contributing towards the vision of the Imagination Factory, not just being about client-facing work and developing stuff internally.
So it can almost feel
other things as well.
Sorry, I was going to say, it must almost feel a little bit like a startup within an agency.
Yeah, it's exactly that. And I think, you know, we're learning a lot with that. It's very challenging, but it is very exciting as well. But it doesn't only have to have that form. You know, like I said before, it might be that one of the team comes up with an idea and it's a very simple one to execute, and we might even make some bits ourselves, and one day we might have a shop as part of our website. Who knows? It's just about having a bit of an outlet. And I know these guys have got things that they've contributed to as well.
Yeah.
It's funny when Mark said about the surfboard, because I watched the cast with Tom Osborne and Parsons.
Well, Tom Parsons never at work.
Parsons was the surfboard, so yeah.
Tom Parsons, if he's listening to this, I'm on his Instagram and I've never seen him work. Every day he's surfing. So I mean,
that's
honestly,
fair enough. I mean, if we can achieve that, then there's no argument.
Exactly.
But I think what came across though was the fact that everybody's faces lit up when they're all talking about making guitars in their sheds, and everybody's got their own interests. So that sort of as an outlet opportunity is really good, because in a big company, your manager wants to know what you're doing every working hour. Yeah. And in a small company, you've got to watch the bottom line. So you can't be just off doing something else if it's client facing.
So Gordon, without going into too much pressing detail, what's it like working at Dyson then? Is it an extreme to where you are now? Is it very different? Are lots of similarities?
It's very different. I mean, and again, it's been touched on in some of the other casts where people have said, sort of you work in a big company, then you've probably got unlimited resources that you're probably not constrained by. But unfortunately, in a big company, you also get probably a greater variety of characters, and egos. I think has been spoken about previously, and the guys at Arrival have said, they don't want that sort of thing. It's damp it all down. You're all trying to pull the same way. So, and that's what's really nice about coming here. Obviously, it's a couple of guys I know. They know me, so they knew what they were letting themselves in for. Yeah. But we are constrained a lot more on budgets than I would have been in the previous role. But equally, I was quite fortunate when I worked in research there that my manager was very good, and as long as I was keeping all of the regular projects ticking over, he would cut me a bit of slack to do some of my own things as well. So
cool.
Yeah, it's pot luck though, just who you get, isn't it? So
yeah, I got told once that working there is a bit like you need to always make out that kind of the idea presented is someone else's idea, like their idea. As in, so if you could do a good job of that, then you can do a good job of working your way up the food chain. If you're presenting to someone and you make it feel like it's their idea, it's a good
Yeah,
That's always
maybe, but it's I mean, sort of. There's a lot of people who basically present what they think wants to be heard rather than necessarily, just how things are, and that's just where it gets a little bit political, I guess. But that's no different to any other big company.
Yeah. And going to work every day and sitting down for lunch and sitting next to someone that you've never met before, or who are these people, in a different department that you both can't talk about what you're doing for work because it's all secret squirrel. And
it's not that. I mean, it's not so much so. The funny one about who you might sit next to at a table though chuckled me when I first joined, because we had a graduate that just joined us. And he was sat around the table, and nobody, so when you're new, you don't realise that there's different colour badges basically that are a little bit of a clue. But other than that, anybody sat around the table, you don't know whether they're a director or a sort of intern. And the graduate sort of challenged somebody who we all knew was a director, and it was sort of. Take a breath around the table.
They taken out the back door, were they never to be seen again?
I mean, the nice thing is, they appreciate that. But I mean, there are perfectly civilized people either that are
good. Good stuff. And Tris, obviously you've been in the agencies world for a while. Is this kind of model, is this different to when you was at Conran or in your last place? Is it this a unique kind of thing, or is this becoming more and more common?
It's unique. It's unique to me. I mean, and that's part of the attraction. And I feel like I've been waiting for this moment all my life. I'm saying that politely.
Are you talking about coming on the podcast or just?
Yeah, but that's what I meant. Yeah. No, it's a sort of combination of. I feel quite well. My time at Conrad's, I feel really privileged. I maybe didn't appreciate it as much as I should have done at the time. But it gave me a really good grounding and a good schooling in lots of different things. It was an agency, but it had a certain standing and a reputation, and it was great to sort of. And a privilege actually to work with clients that came to you, very high quality clients that came to you with decent budgets and really high standards and really good aspiration for what they wanted to achieve. So you had to deliver. So that was the challenge. But what I really enjoyed was the variety and the different types of client that wanted a bit of the Conran magic. And there was a Conran sort of point of view and sort of Conran eyes on things, and that was great. And we were afforded a lot of, and this is sort of credit to Terence and Sebastian Conran and the other leadership people that were there, that they really afforded you a lot of bandwidth to really get stuck in and lead projects from day one really. So I'm really grateful for that experience. But like I said, by the time I'd been there a long time and I rose to the lofty heights of design director, but this design thinking thing was knocking around, and I kind of thought, well, I really need to sort of start to involve that and get a better understanding of that and the benefits that come from that I could see using insights from your, whoever your user audience was. But blending that with, instinct and intuition that you got from your own point of view, which you've formed over a number of years as a practitioner. So to actually do that for real, the opportunity to go to PDD was a good one, because that's, they're dyed-in-the-wool advocates of using human-centered design. So that was a good thing. So that really kind of rounded off my skill set as I saw it. And because at the end of the day, clients, they come to you because they have a problem to be solved, whatever that might be, and they need your point of view and your expertise. If they knew how to do it themselves, they wouldn't be asking you. So that's your responsibility. You have to give your direction to them, and Yeah.
Yeah, and if
it's
it was too easy, they wouldn't spend the money with you
too
either.
easy,
Would they?
everyone
Just
would
do
be
it
doing it.
themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you kind of discover after a number of years of doing it. I mean, it easily took me 10 years to kind of actually say, wow, I know what I'm doing now. But 15, 20 years in, you feel really confident and about discussing with clients, and a lot of it is about giving your ear to them and your time, really trying to understand what it is strategically they want to do, and provide them with direction. What do we do next? And that I find really exciting. That's the thing that kind of keeps me going, rather than sit in front of a screen and long gone are those days really. But it's strategy and strategizing with the client, trying to understand where the opportunities are, trying to create the next thing for them that will take their business forward, be they a well-established brand or a nascent brand, or an entrepreneur, a startup.
Yeah, I'd imagine there's an extra level of pressure when your name's on the door, though, which you seem to see less and less now. Agencies don't seem to name themselves after their own name anymore. I don't know if that's just designers, they're maybe less ego-driven than maybe what they were, or you don't seem to see as many with their names on the door anymore.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, to some extent, there can be a kind of a name associated with a style. So there's maybe a style above the door rather than a name. And,
right.
You see that sometimes with. I mean, I kind of bang on about this a little bit. A kind of startup aesthetic, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but I think sometimes with the pace of startup, the pressures on the idea and the design, and there's pressures on everybody in the startup, and limited funds, limited time, limited resource sometimes, and there's a kind of pressure to get there quickly. And I think sometimes the idea, the identity, the industrial design, the idea, as I like to call it, the identity of the product and how it's representing your brand, that can kind of get passed over a little bit, and a kind of slightly cookie cutter approach can happen for probably good reasons. But I think it's a shame that there's not more time spent in exploring the DNA of a brand and then getting it to really understand it and manifest it, because we see form as a function. If you can give form to something, its primary function is to A, get it noticed, B, represent a brand, C, represent how it works, and not in any particular order, but you should. I put a lot of store by it, so I'll defend it to the end.
Hello, you're probably wondering why on earth the screen's changed, but we've got a sponsor, and Ineo Solutions, who are a platinum reseller of Keyshot and PTC, have kindly agreed to sponsor us, which is pretty cool. And
amazing.
Yeah, and Drew, you actually work with these guys. You know what they're all about.
Yeah, I've worked with them a few times over the years. Like I say, I've had them. I've gone to them for my Keyshot supplies, my Creo supplies, and I've even done training with them. But yeah, no, I'm going to do Keyshot training for a day shortly.
Got to get as good as the kids, Drew.
Yeah. There's a lot of mean competition out there now, so I've got all my skills, man.
Yeah, good stuff. And I'm sure you'd agree, but they've been lovely people as well so far. And
Absolutely,
and I'm not a massive people person, but they've been massively lovely. So that's the biggest endorsement I can give them. And they're so nice that they're actually giving us, or not us, but anyone that signs up to the Design Truth Patreon, which is about £6 a month. I mean, we're not breaking the bank here, but anyone that signs up, they're going to get given a £100 voucher to use on Ineo's stuff. So maybe your Keyshot needs updating, or your Creo, or you need to rustle up on it, or a bit of training. You need to go and meet Drew for some training. He isn't doing the training, so don't worry about that one. But yeah, they've been very lovely. They're doing the whole Patreon thing, getting involved in Design Truth. We'll let you get back to the podcast now, but we just thought we would let you know. Stay safe, and I'm sure we'll see you all for a pint very soon. One of the big things I did want to talk to you about is BCorp, which is a thing I'll be honest with you, never heard about a couple of months ago, and now it keeps popping up on my feed. So either either my algorithm's changed, or it's becoming a new big thing. But we actually had a few kind of listener questions surrounding it, but it might be a good place to start, Mark, with just what it is and how you guys are a part of it as a bit of as a model. So over to you.
Well, you're right. You will see it more and more at the moment. It's not just because you've decided to buy a red car and now all the cars are seen red. Actually, B Corp is a movement that began in the US, but it's spreading around the world. And at the moment, the UK is the fastest growing country. It's got the most number of companies that are becoming certified B Corps in the whole world. So that's really exciting. And what it's about basically is that the people that began it wanted to provide a standard by which companies could be evaluated and therefore become certified, which means that you've committed yourself to a triple bottom line. So you are concerned with people, the planet, and profit. So it's recognizing that businesses, in order to be successful and sustainable, they have to make profit. But it's doing that in a way which is not contrary to the way you treat people and the way you treat the planet. It recognizes the fact that we're all on a journey. No one's perfect. No business is perfect. But in order to become a certified B Corp, we have to achieve a certain standard. They have an assessment process. It's arduous. It took us about 6 months to go through the process, and then another 6 months of evaluation, after which we were awarded our certification. I believe we're the first design and engineering consultancy that's achieved that in the UK. And in fact, there aren't that many across the world. It tends to be mostly, historically, it's been more companies like Patagonia, so clothing brands, and a lot of food brands. I think some of you might be familiar with Cook meals, the sort of ready frozen meals that are all handmade. They're B Corp. There's a lot of companies. I think maybe even Ben and Jerry's, but there's some well-known brands, and then there's also a lot of not well-known businesses. But once you become certified and you can then join the B Corp movement, then you've obviously got access to all those other people in the network as well, and that's really helpful, because sometimes, one of the things that we think about a lot is the suppliers that we use. So we want to, where possible, try and choose suppliers that have similar values to us. And how do you do that? It's actually very time consuming to go through and vet all of your suppliers. Whereas if you're looking for a particular thing and you find that there's a number of B Corp certified companies already providing that, then you know that they've gone through the same rigorous process and that they essentially have very similar values to yourself. So it's very handy for us from that point of view. So it's helping us choose, even down to kitchen rolls for the studio, or the tea bags that it just means not that everything we have is B Corp certified. It's not really possible to do that at the moment, but it does mean that we've got an easy place to go to. And also we then get to contribute back the other way as well. So if someone's looking for a design consultancy that is taking sustainability seriously, not just in the products they design, but also in the way the business is run, and that we treat the people that according to a certain set of standards, then if they see the B Corp logo or certification, then they know what we're about. Yeah,
it's more than just kind of greenwashing, as you've put investment into that process. What is that? You said it took you 6 months. Generally, what is that process like of getting you a little bit of paper?
It's hard. It's hard. So there's 5 categories. I can't remember them off the top of my head, but it's things like governance and the environment and team. There's 5 main categories. Within each category, there's a raft of questions, and we actually got they're called B leaders, who are like consultants who have helped other companies go through the process, or they've gone through it themselves. We decided, on the advice of a friend of mine, if you want to do this, then you've got to put the work in yourself. But if you get one of these B leaders, they can really help you figure out your way through the process. So yeah, she came in, I think, once a week for the first 3 months. And we worked through the initial, what you do is you go through the initial assessment and you fail. That's the way it's designed. and then it shows you all the things that you need to improve and change, because you're not supposed to pass first time, and also you get re-evaluated every 2 years, and you're supposed to actually ratchet up your commitment to various things. So yeah, the process was basically going through all these questions, really having to dig into, you know, all of our policies and the sort of way that we were set up from a governance point of view, and sort of finding out where you would fail the assessment. And then it's a bit like taking your car to the MOT, knowing that it's going to fail, but at least then you find out what's wrong and get it fixed.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So then the next 3 months was fixing everything, and then you submit it all. There's a certain threshold score that you need to achieve, and once you've achieved that, you know you can submit, and then you have a few challenging interviews, shall I say, with people from the BCorp.
It's a bit like The Apprentice, is it?
Yeah, it's just like that.
A bit like Claude. So roughly, is there like a cost to it? Do you have to?
There is a cost. It's not prohibitive. I think it was £1,000. I can't remember off the top of my head, but there is a cost which you only pay once you have passed. So you don't have to pay up for it. So once you know you're going to be certified, then you pay for the certification.
Okay. And do you have to pay for that, like when you have to recertify, is like a constant?
Yeah, I think you do that every 2 years. Yeah. So what's nice about it is it's that, you know, they're not trying to make it prohibitive from a cost point of view. Some of these other labels.
There'd be a greater sense of irony if they did, though, wouldn't it? Because it's all about you know, balancing profit and purpose and all that kind of stuff. So,
exactly.
Yeah, that hopefully we had a listener question from a chap called James Wood, and I'm pretty sure you just answered most of his questions from Studio Wood. So if he's got any more complaints, let us know. But you've pretty much covered off the kind of the BCorp stuff. So thank you for that. Tristan, I'd be interested in if kind of now you've got this certificate, does it add a greater sense of pressure? You know, your clients come into you and you've got to say, oof, maybe lean back on the plastic on this one. You know, is it
not?
No.
So for me, you know, sort of had 8 years at Herman Miller.
Right.
They're obviously very strong on their sustainability and where all the products come from and how you design products. Usually based around the cradle to cradle certification. So you know, sort of to come here whenever we have clients in through the door, it's quite interesting because they ask you, how are you going to do this? And it's like, well, it depends on the life of the product, the materials you're using, where the materials have come from, how long they're going to last, and what happens to at the end of life. And they're all exactly the same questions from my point of view that we used to consider when I was at Herman Miller. So from my perspective, I feel quite comfortable just slotting in at the moment. So, you know, but you do have clients who feel quite strongly sometimes about a particular aspect, you know, sort of using particular materials or saying, I mustn't use any plastic. But you sometimes have to say, yeah, but you know, so you're going to take that bit of plastic, but it's going to live in that machine for 50 years, then, you know, it's not that bad in a life cycle perspective. So is there a lot of educating clients around sustainability? I'd imagine they'd watch a David Attenborough, you know, documentary and feel quite strongly about it. But is your role as much education of some of the realities of it than just saying plastic is bad? You know, do you find yourself, particularly when a client first comes through the door, it's that kind of educational piece as much as anything else? A lot of it can be, but it's really important to understand their perspective. Yeah. So if you understand where they're coming from and why they want to do that, then you can have a sensible conversation about it. Yeah.
It's coming from a good place, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, sort of the intent is there, but you put a different spin on it, and all of a sudden they kind of go, oh yeah, okay, that's good. You know, sort of, and it's strange things like, you know, sort of, yeah, you can get this really sustainable material, but it's from so far away that you know, sort of, you've just offset all of your carbon already. So yeah. So for me, I'm fairly comfortable with it, to be honest. Fortunately.
Yeah. Tris?
Yeah, I mean, I take a view. Basically, if we try and focus our clients on value creation. So if we talk, we use slightly different vocabulary. So when we talk about, they might talk about customers, we would talk about audience. because that kind of frames it as, you know, they are looking at you and they're watching what you do. And, you know, the zeitgeist at any given time, particularly at the moment, around sustainability and all sorts of other good things that are coming about in recent years, and that are going to be, they're going to be normal and givens in not so long. You know, they should be providing value to their audience, and that's what counts. And if they want to have a sustainable business, i.e. a business in 2 years, in 3 years, 5 years or 10, they need to be really aware of what value is and how it changes. It's a perception of how they view your brand, the products you give them, the service experience that you provide them. It's incredibly important to help our clients frame that. So I think it's in the zeitgeist, you know, it's in the air that things should be sustainable, materials should be sustainable, but there's no point, and it's a bit of a crime really to put stuff out there that nobody values or nobody needs or is only sort of for this season. That's a real waste, you know, and that's doing nobody a service. And we certainly would feel bad about designing stuff that we know is going to end up in a bargain bucket, you know. And I don't mean KFC.
Good stuff. I'd imagine it's probably quite handy from a tendering perspective, you know, pitching, you know, we are the BCorp agency, whereas others might say it on a brochure, but you're like, we've got the bit of paper and we've actually gone through this process of doing it. Have you found there's been any benefit from that side of things, or more inquiries?
I mean, that really wasn't, you know, genuinely wasn't the reason why we did it. We thought there might be a benefit when we were talking with clients, but genuinely we wanted to do it. Well, it was actually a friend of mine who's a jeweler, and he had gone through the process, and I've thought about it previously because we were looking into cradle to cradle, and we tried to do a few projects with cradle to cradle principles. And so we were looking for, you know, how do we want to be as a business, and that was the genuine motivation for being certified. But what we have found is, yeah, at the moment, like, you've not heard of it, and most of the clients that we talk to still haven't heard of it, but probably maybe 25%, when they see the logo, they recognize it as like, I've seen that on something, you know, they can't even remember where, but it will become a lot more recognizable because it's really growing and it's got a lot of backing from some, you know, very large brands now. And yeah, I think even if a client doesn't understand it in the tendering process, when we explain that it has a meaning to us, and that it means that we've succumbed, or we've submitted ourselves to a rigorous process because we want the business to operate a certain way, then yeah, all the feedback we get from people is that you know, they understand that. It's so hard in the tendering process to actually say, oh, you know, we do design for sustainability, because everyone does design. If you're a designer nowadays, you don't just
it's just a given.
Do it.
Yeah.
But the BCorp thing, I think, just gives us a bit of an edge because it's that plus. It's not just about the environment. It is about that. And we've done European funded projects around recycled plastics, using them in products. And we've done cradle to cradle stuff. But actually, there's a lot more than just thinking about what you do as a designer or engineer when you commit the Earth's resources to your idea. There's actually all of the other stuff about why the business exists in the first place. And I think, yeah, that does usually raise a few eyebrows, and they ask a few more questions.
Yeah, well, I do believe you, because I listened to a video of you talking about business cards, and you was talking about how you created the Imagination Factory business card and the kind of the lengths you went to, whereas most others would have just bought it from some sort of website, but you went for a full kind of process of, right, okay, supplier, you know, where's it coming from, carbon emissions, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and the thing with that, I mean, that was, again, I guess in our DNA was to listen to the people on the team, and that was someone on the team who challenged me and Julian, who's the co-founder, you know, to have a go at a cradle to cradle thing. You need some business cards. Why not try and do that? And we thought that would be easy, surely a business card is easy. And what we discoveed was that at the time, so this is going back a few years now, but at the time you could get all kinds of business cards that claim to be sustainable. You could even get ones that had a seed in them so that you could plant them in the ground and it would grow, and chili plant, wonderful. And they were all done on recycled paper and et cetera, fantastic. But what it turned out was that not a single business card producer in the UK at that time could guarantee that they weren't using toxic inks. Right. So the business card obviously gets thrown away. Even if it goes into the recycling, that stuff gets washed out and sluiced out somewhere. So you're putting toxic inks back into somewhere into the watercourse. So we ended up having to go to Austria. It was the only place we found that could do. They were cradle to cradle certified, which meant they'd gone through a rigorous process as well. And nowadays we don't use business cards. It doesn't matter.
I can't remember the last time I went, here's a business card, and I'd actually find it quite strange if I was in a meeting and someone gave me their business card. I'd be like, I'm pretty sure I've just got you on LinkedIn, but thanks for your business card. Thanks for exactly. I've asked this. We've basically tried to close each episode by asking this particular question. But for the last 3 or 4 episodes, the question's been ducked. But I'm hoping that because there's 3 of you, one of you will be able to give me an answer to this question. So it's not a trick question, but it's the question is, what is the strangest brief you've ever come across? Now, most people answer this question and they'll say, I can't tell you about it. I've signed an NDA or something. But I'm hoping that one or 3 of you could just say a very bizarre brief that's come across your desk and just something you look back and kind of laugh at and you think, what?
List of them.
We don't need to duck this. There's a list.
We should have you on every week.
I had one that came across my table a long time ago, and it was bizarre because it was a kind of basically a product that would turn a pushchair into a death trap, and there was no telling the client. The other odd thing about it was that they wanted us to sign a contract that guaranteed a certain number of sales, and we were like, I'm not going to do that because that's your side of the thing. We can work with you to get there, but there's limits to what we can do. There's probably a few others as well. That's my one, the death trap.
The strangest one for me that I can remember is being at an exhibition. We were exhibiting one of our own ideas, which is the heads-up display for swimmers, swim AR.
Yep. So
we were there with a little model and prototype, and it was very early stage, but it was one of these exhibitions all about innovation. So we'd been invited to go and take part. So we're there, and then this guy walks up to us. We had lots of people walking up to us wanting to see what we were doing and talk to us. And short guy kind of walked up to us and said, I work for BP, and I'm basically doing their innovation scouting. I've spent 12 months going around the world, finding out about people doing different innovative stuff, and it's really, really cool, and I'd love to talk to you about that, but that's not what I really want to talk to you about. What I actually want to talk to you about is this. And he brought his phone out of his pocket, and he showed us a video that he'd taken at the weekend, which was basically him with, I think, 6 microjet turbine engines strapped to various parts of his body, and basically flying. But it was only just getting off the ground. It was early days for him. This is what he was doing in his spare time. And he said, the thing is, the problem I've got is I've got a very limited amount of fuel because these jet turbines burn through the fuel very quickly. And as I'm learning to master this beast, I want to make my fuel last as long as possible. Plus, I don't want to run out of fuel when I'm up in the air. And he said, at the moment, I get my wife's iPhone and I set a timer for 5 minutes and I stick it in my boot. And when it vibrates, I land. He said, I think there might be a better way using some kind of lightweight heads-up display. Can you help me? And so we thought, yeah, I think we could probably help you. And that turned into us doing a heads-up display for Richard Browning from Gravity Industries. He's a good friend of ours, and he's gone on to do amazing things. And who would have thought that from him sort of walking up to us, almost embarrassed to show us this video, but because he could see we had something innovative and we'd put ourselves out there as well. I think he thought these are my people.
Yeah. Is this the same thing? I'm pretty sure it was on the news the other day of it might have been an air ambulance going in the mountains somewhere.
Yeah, so he demonstrated how because a lot of people say, well, what's the use in it's like people call him the real life Iron Man, which I don't think he likes particularly. But yeah, he's been demonstrating various different use cases. One of which is he did a simulated mountain rescue, and going from the bottom to the top of the mountain took him minutes, whereas I think it was going to take over an hour and a half with the mountain rescue team to do the same distance. So, obvious use case there. And now he doesn't have to wonder if he's going to run out of fuel, because he can see on his heads-up display.
It's one of those kind of ideas you look and go, wow, what a great idea, and you kind of think, there are some positive applications to this, but also some potentially quite dangerous ones as well. But you just hope that bit of tech doesn't go into the wrong hands. But Tim, what about you? I may have to flip the question slightly, where it's like, has a designer ever come to you with a particularly strange brief, and you've gone every day, and you've gone absolutely not?
No, I mean, I guess it's. It's why we're here. So it's to challenge. What can we do? So that's quite a nice way Tris works. Is sort of speak to the client and say, can we do this? You won't actually commit, which is good. So I don't know whether he's just putting on a good show to start with. So he'll let it slip as time goes on. But no, usually sort of it's the benefit of just sort of working together, basically, to just go, well, let's not just say no straight away. What could we do? And we have a project at the moment where we were looking at something we could potentially do. We decided not to, because it's a little bit complicated, so we're going to go for a slightly simpler approach. But it should be a little bit more robust for that. But that's not to say we won't be quite adventurous sometimes. Possibly too much, but so you have to just rein it in sometimes. But,
So if I let you speak on behalf of engineers worldwide, what are the things? What are the things about designers that you don't particularly enjoy, in terms of what are the big don'ts and what are the big do's to get the most out of an engineer? Would you say?
I'll just write these down.
Yeah, right.
I think it's probably credibility for the downstream stuff. So for anybody in any kind of design or engineering, I would say, sort of, if you get the opportunity, however much you might think it's irrelevant to you, try and go right the way through the process. So, sort of from coming up with an idea on a paper as to sort of the concept, right the way through all the pain of tolerance stacks and all the dull engineering stuff, making jigs and fixtures, tools not working, breaking, going out to customers saying it's not any good, and you have to do rework and fixing things, going out on site and actually having customers shouting at you, all those kinds of things. That full spectrum makes you become so much more sensitive to what you do at the front end, basically. So if you can consider things and make a considered judgment early doors, it just makes the whole process so much easier.
Do you
Instead
think that
of being
takes
a
time?
2-year program, you could do it in 12 months.
Yeah. Do you think that takes time in terms of years of experience to get to that point? Do you have to go through that kind of naivety of going down a rabbit hole and to eventually get to that point? Yeah.
Yes, of course you do. Yeah. And sort of, but equally, you don't want to choke somebody's enthusiasm. So when we're saying, somebody comes along and goes, I've got this great idea. It's really easy for sort of. And our sort of more staid engineers who have only stayed in just sort of the product development side of things, who would go, they suck teeth through their teeth and say, oh, no, you can't do it like that. And nothing ever changes because of that. People get settled into, that's not the way we did it last time kind of mentality.
We've had a fair amount of work now that's come as a result of large multinational brands who've got strong design and engineering teams in-house, but have still found that they're coming up against a wall, whether it's to have the audacity to try something new, or maybe internally they've got those tensions where the design team is wanting to push the boundaries, but the engineering team is struggling with the reality of it. And sometimes they come to us, and it's helpful to have someone from the outside who says, well, why not? Let's have a go at this. And because internally we don't have those same struggles. I think the clue's in the name. We really value the imagination at the beginning, but it's all about the delivery from the factory at the end, and I think that's absolutely core.
That ties in nicely. A bit of advice that I got. When I was waiting for a flight coming back from Tokyo. I was lucky enough to spend some time in Japan with Richard Seymour a long time ago, and I had some great conversations with him. And one thing that stuck with me was something along the lines of, I'll misquote him, but it was to do with, the role as a designer is to deal with he had this lovely phrase called emotional ergonomics. How a product, what it resonated, what it imbued in you, what thoughts, and all this kind of stuff. But it said, you've got to be a master of emotional ergonomics, but you better understand supply chains as well. And I thought, yeah. I'll go and look up and find what a supply chain is.
Write that one down.
But very important moment for me, because it really framed things nicely, just in a little short sentence.
Am I allowed to put a challenge out there?
Go for it, yeah. Go for it. Put a challenge out there, Mark.
So one of the things that has always mattered to us since the beginning, and is also part of the B Corp certification, is we really care about diversity. We're not just saying that. I know that that's a buzzword, but it genuinely, we believe that design, engineering, any form of creative industry is better with diversity. You're not seeing any diversity here.
It's a good start, Mark. It's a good start.
I just thought I'd point out the obvious. But what the challenge I want to put out there is, okay, we represent a certain era in history, a certain period of time, but 20 years later, things should have changed. And even when we go through recruitment processes over the last 5 years, we struggle to find sufficient diversity in design and engineering. And, that goes all the way back to school, and how these design and technology and how all those things are taught, and how they're perceived, and who's encouraged to do them. And it goes all the way back to, to that, and then to the universities, and so on. So the challenge I want to put out there for any listeners is, play your part in that, whatever that might be. And I've got no magic bullet, and we haven't found the answer. And I'd love to say that we're setting up a foundation to encourage diversity in design. We're not in that position to do that, but there's got to be a better solution. There's got to be a better future, because we all suffer if there isn't sufficient diversity in design and engineering. I discovered the other day, I think it was 2017 maybe, or 2007. Anyway, it's a shockingly recent time when seatbelts were properly designed for the female body. And that's because white middle class men have been in charge of designing all
Have you read the book Invisible Women, Mark?
Yes, it was in that, wasn't it? Yeah. Exactly. So all that stuff needs to change. Let's do it. We've got to do it together.
Yeah, I'll do a bit of a promotion for someone else, actually. So it's a really good kind of question you posed, and I'm sure we'll get people that will definitely be on board with that. But I'm sure you've heard of Canidafor. I know you've mentioned him before. Listened to him. Their chap called Sunny Panazar, who heads up their portfolio management, has just started. I can't remember the name of the foundation. I can only apologise, but I'll leave it in a link somewhere. But Canidafor are doing this thing where they are sponsoring a few final year students. It's all around diversity to make sure that they get the best possible education they can. So they're giving them a couple of £1,000 cash prize. They're making sure they get internships, both at Canidafor and for their clients as well. So it's making sure that anyone that goes through the educational system, there's just absolutely no excuse for you not to hire them because they've been given the relevant kind of experience to come through. I think they're doing it with 3 final year students, but the plan is for them to open source it to the industry to make it not a Kinnear 4 thing. Sonny Pans, I was trying to get Sonny on as a guest, but I don't know who will get around to it. But
he might do now.
Yeah, that wasn't in the script, Mark. But I'll leave a link on Sonny's founder. I can't remember the name of it. I can only apologise, Sonny, but I'll leave the relevant link into the thing if anyone else is interested in seeing what he's trying to do there. And that's from just his own lived experience of been in the industry for a while and thought, we need to do something about this. But I think just a bit like sustainability, Mark, it's one of those things where it's like, right, we need to now, rather than talk about it, do something about it. And maybe that's, I see you guys are recruiting quite recently. You probably looked through the applications that were coming through and thought, it's a challenge, right? And we need to be a bit more of an active effort rather than just kind of relying on what's coming through. Is that part of the reason it's kind of brought something like that up or not?
Yeah, but it's something we've noticed for a long time. It's not just recent.
Good stuff. Well, it's been a pleasure, actually. I hope you 3 enjoyed it. I can only apologise that Drew wasn't here, so you probably didn't get the full experience, but you got halfway there. So so thank you for that, and I'm sure at some point, I know me and Drew are planning kind of more physical get-togethers, in a room over a pint type thing. So the Imagination Factory can definitely come along and have a pint with us.